It was late in the evening when the idea struck me, a moment of clarity that felt like a sudden realization. I'd spent years in the field, diagnosing, prescribing, and performing treatments, but what I had failed to consider was the quiet power of something we all take for granted: food. I sat alone in the dim light of my office, surrounded by the usual clutter of charts, books, and patient files. The air was heavy with the faint smell of old paper and the hum of the building's aging ventilation system. My hands rested on the edge of my desk, the weight of a long day of consultation still lingering in my shoulders. The office was usually a place of control, where decisions were made, and the outcome was often predictable. But tonight, something felt different. Over the past few weeks, I had started to notice a pattern: an increasing number of older patients coming in with complaints about their vision. They weren't just dealing with blurry eyesight or reading glasses that didn't seem to help anymore. No, it was deeper than that. It was a fatigue in their eyes, a strain that never seemed to go away, no matter what they tried. A subtle, persistent discomfort that seemed to worsen with age, no matter how healthy they were otherwise. As a doctor who had always believed in modern medicine's ability to fix almost anything, this realization struck me as a contradiction to everything I had been trained to believe. There had to be more to this problem than simply age, or poor genetics, or even eye strain. What if the solution wasn't just in the treatments we had on hand, but in something simpler, something we overlooked every day? I had spent years looking at eyes, examining them, diagnosing them, and giving prescriptions for treatments, but had I ever really considered how the food we eat could impact our vision? Of course, I knew the basic facts: carrots are good for your eyes, leafy greens are healthy, but it had always felt like a vague piece of advice, not something concrete, not something with real scientific weight behind it. But something in me couldn't let go of the thought. I began researching, diving into studies, and reading papers late into the night. The more I read, the more I began to connect the dots. I came across studies that showed how specific nutrients, like lutein, zeaxanthin, and beta-carotene, played a critical role in maintaining eye health, especially as we aged. These nutrients, found in certain vegetables, could act as antioxidants, protecting the eyes from oxidative damage and even improving visual function. The surprising part wasn't just that these nutrients existed, it was the revelation that the way we prepared food could unlock their full potential. Cooking vegetables like carrots, spinach, kale, and sweet potatoes didn't just make them more palatable, it made their nutrients more bioavailable to the body. The combination of cooking and pairing these foods with healthy fats like olive oil or butter helped the body absorb the vitamins and antioxidants more effectively. It all made sense in a way that I hadn't considered before. This wasn't just about eating healthy, it was about strategically consuming foods that could repair and maintain our eyes as we slept. It was about taking control of our bodies in a way that went beyond the confines of a doctor's office or a pharmacy. That night, I sat back in my chair, looking at the papers scattered across my desk. The idea seemed so simple, almost too simple to be true. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was an area of medicine that had been largely ignored. How could something as basic as cooking and eating the right vegetables, in the right way, become a powerful tool in preserving our eyesight? What if food really could repair and protect us? I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. There was too much potential here to ignore. It wasn't about dismissing the conventional treatments I had always prescribed. It was about adding something new to the conversation, a holistic approach that didn't just rely on what came from a bottle, but what came from the earth. I couldn't help but feel the spark of excitement. I was sitting on something that could not only change the way we thought about eye care, but perhaps redefine the relationship we had with food altogether. It was an exciting, unexpected direction for my practice, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I was on the brink of something meaningful. I made a mental note to look further into this tomorrow. There was more to uncover, more to understand. But for tonight, I felt a sense of satisfaction in knowing that I had discovered something profound in the quiet of my office, something that could change lives, starting with my own. The idea hadn't left my mind since that evening. Every time I ate something, I found myself considering its impact on my body, not just in the way it satisfied hunger or fueled my energy, but in how it might affect the deeper, more intricate processes within. It was as though a curtain had been lifted, and I saw food not just as a basic necessity, but as a tool, something that could heal, restore, and maintain health in ways I had never truly appreciated before. I began to experiment with the vegetables I had learned about: carrots, spinach, kale, and sweet potatoes. Each meal became a small experiment, a way to understand this new approach. I wasn't just cooking for the sake of convenience, I was cooking with intention. Each dish was designed to maximize the absorption of nutrients: sautéing spinach in olive oil, roasting sweet potatoes with a dash of butter, making sure to cook the carrots long enough to break down their cell walls. Every step was deliberate, calculated. As I prepared these meals, I realized how little I had considered the true potential of food before. We all know that vegetables are healthy. But how many of us have truly thought about how we cook them? How often do we really consider the science behind how our body absorbs the nutrients they provide? I certainly hadn't, until now. I decided to share my newfound knowledge with a few of my closest colleagues, most of them specialists in different fields. We had gathered for lunch, and as we ate, I casually brought up the topic, explaining the connection between certain vegetables and eye health. Most of them were intrigued but skeptical. "Food as medicine," one of them said, raising an eyebrow. I thought that was just an old wives' tale. I understood their hesitation. Medicine had always been about treatments, prescriptions, and technology. But here I was, suggesting that something as simple as a cooked vegetable could improve a person's health. The idea felt almost too basic to be real. But I wasn't deterred. The more I talked about the research, the more their skepticism seemed to wane. One of them, a cardiologist, leaned in. "Okay, but what's the real science behind this? You can't just tell people to eat vegetables and expect them to reverse the damage done by years of aging." I smiled, knowing exactly what he meant. This wasn't about a quick fix, a magic bullet. It was about making small, sustainable changes that could shift the trajectory of someone's health over time. I began pulling up the studies I had read, showing how specific antioxidants in these vegetables could protect the retina, fight free radicals, and improve blood flow to the eyes, particularly when consumed regularly and prepared correctly. The conversation shifted. They became curious, asking for more information about the specific compounds and how they worked. By the end of lunch, they were all asking me for recipes, interested in trying this new method for themselves. But it wasn't just the professionals who seemed intrigued. I had started to experiment with recommending this approach to a few of my patients. It was a delicate conversation. Most of my patients were used to the routine, prescriptions for eye drops, glasses, maybe even laser surgery. The idea that they could support their eye health through diet alone felt foreign. But the more I talked about it, the more they seemed to buy into it. One patient, an elderly woman named Margaret, took my advice to heart. She had been dealing with worsening vision for years, and though her prescription had changed several times, nothing seemed to help. She was in her mid-70s, and she had long accepted the gradual decline of her eyesight. Yet, after our conversation about food and eye health, she decided to give it a try. Margaret came back a few weeks later, her eyes bright and her smile even brighter. "I can see the difference," she said simply, as though she had always known. I didn't realize how much I had just accepted the way my eyes were deteriorating. It wasn't a miracle, but it feels like, I don't know, a restoration. Like I'm getting something back I didn't think I could. That moment struck me. It wasn't about curing vision problems. It was about giving her the tools to feel like she had more control over her health, even at an age when it often feels like we've lost it. The vegetables weren't magic, but they were part of a larger picture, a holistic approach to wellness that incorporated the power of food, the body's natural ability to heal, and the quiet, unspoken wisdom of eating with purpose. It was clear that this wasn't just a small dietary change, it was a shift in how I viewed my patient's health, and my own. Food had always been central to life, but I was beginning to see that it could also be central to healing. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I had a feeling this was only the beginning. This wasn't about giving up the conventional treatments or overlooking modern medicine, it was about adding something new to the equation. And for the first time in my career, I felt like I was offering more than just a prescription, I was offering a path to empowerment. Maybe it wasn't a revolution, but it was a quiet revolution within the walls of my office. A small but meaningful change, rooted in something as simple as the food we eat, had begun to reshape how I thought about healing and health. As the months passed, I began to notice a shift in not just my vision but my overall health. The daily changes I had made, from food choices to supplements, had started to show their effects in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't an instant transformation, but it was enough to make me believe that my initial suspicions had been right, that food could be a powerful tool in improving my eye health and overall well-being. The first step in my journey had been incorporating more cooked vegetables, carrots, spinach, kale, and sweet potatoes, into my meals, but it quickly became clear that it wasn't just about adding these to my plate. I needed to optimize the way I prepared and consumed them to make sure my body could absorb the nutrients effectively. Olive oil was my first ally. I began using extra virgin olive oil not only as a cooking medium but also as a finishing touch to dishes. It wasn't just for flavor, it was a way to ensure that the fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A and vitamin E were absorbed properly. Roasting sweet potatoes with a drizzle of olive oil, sautéing spinach in it, or adding a bit of it to a carrot soup became staples of my meals. I hadn't realized how much this simple ingredient could improve the effectiveness of my vegetable-rich diet. Next came the supplements. While I wasn't one to rely on pills or powders, I knew that a little extra support wouldn't hurt, especially as I was now experimenting with a new way of taking care of myself. I began taking an antioxidant supplement that contained lutein, zeaxanthin, and bilberry extract. These three ingredients were known for their role in eye health, lutein and zeaxanthin for their protection against harmful blue light and oxidative damage, and bilberry for its support of night vision. Since I had noticed a decline in my ability to see clearly in low light, I figured that adding bilberry into my routine could be a smart move. Taking the supplement daily alongside my meals gave me an extra layer of support, enhancing the nutrients I was getting from my food. One unexpected addition to my nightly routine proved to be a game changer: cottage cheese. After learning about the importance of protein timing and the value of slow-digesting proteins, I started incorporating low-fat cottage cheese into my evening meals. It seemed counterintuitive at first. I wasn't looking for muscle repair, but I had read that the slow-digesting casein protein in cottage cheese could help with cellular regeneration, especially during sleep. And since the eyes are constantly exposed to stress and require repair, this small but strategic move had a bigger impact than I expected. I started eating a small bowl of cottage cheese with a sprinkle of cinnamon or some berries an hour or so before bed, and soon enough, I felt a difference. My eyes felt more rested when I woke up in the morning, and the irritation I had once felt after long hours of work or reading began to dissipate. But it wasn't just about the food and supplements. The daily habit of drinking green tea also became a cornerstone of my routine. Green tea, rich in antioxidants called catechins, provided an anti-inflammatory boost to my body. I had always heard that it was good for the heart, but it was only after I researched its benefits for the eyes that I became truly convinced. I started drinking a cup of green tea in the afternoon, knowing that the catechins would help protect my eyes from the oxidative stress that built up over the course of a day. Plus, the calming effect of the tea helped me unwind after work, making it the perfect afternoon ritual. As I continued this routine, the results were undeniable. My eyes felt clearer, and my vision, especially in low light, improved gradually. I could read without straining. Even late at night, when I used to struggle with my vision, I found that I was no longer squinting or rubbing my eyes. The irritation I had become so used to after hours of staring at screens or reading books had significantly reduced. My eyes felt less fatigued, and I noticed that they were less red and dry at the end of the day. I had thought that aging would inevitably lead to a gradual decline in my sight, but now, I was starting to believe there was more I could do to slow that process down. This wasn't some miraculous, instant transformation. It wasn't as though I woke up one day with perfect vision. But the cumulative effects of these small, consistent changes were real. The right vegetables, the added healthy fats, the strategic supplements, and the nightly protein boost all worked together to give me results I hadn't anticipated. My eyes were stronger, clearer, and more rested, and in turn, my overall sense of well-being had improved as well. The clarity I gained from focusing on my food choices translated into a deeper understanding of how much control I truly had over my health.